तो प्रॉब्लम तो आप मुझे बता दीजिए। एससीक्यूज में अगर कोई प्रॉब्लम है तो भी मुझे बता दें कि एससीक्यूज का कोई जिक्र नहीं था। हाँ जी, चलिए, दैट्स गुड, दैट्स गुड कि कंफर्मेशन से आप लोग सेटिस्फाइड है। डू वी हैव एनी अदर क्वेश्चन बेटा? एनीथिंग रिगार्डिंग द फाइनल स्टेज? आई गेस नॉट। अच्छा, और दूसरी बात ये है बच्चे कि प्लीज टेल योर क्लास, टेल योर इंटायर क्लास, अभी तक तो सिर्फ 76-78 पार्टिसिपेंट्स ही है। मैं एंड पे दोबारा भी रिपीट कर दूंगी इफ आई हैव इनफ टाइम। बेटा ये जो हिडन नेक हम पढ़ रहे हैं, प्लीज इसको सीरियसली लिए बिकॉज यू विल बी हैविंग अ सब स्टेज। मैं कोशिश करूंगी कि 19th को इंस्टेड ऑफ हैविंग एन एपिडियोलॉजी टेस्ट यू हैव अ सब स्टेज, ठीक है? तो ये प्लीज क्लास में सर्कुलेट कर ले। अभी ये कंफर्म नहीं है, डेट अभी कंफर्म नहीं है। डेट में नेक्स्ट क्लास में इंशाल्लाह आई विल कंफर्म द डेट। लेकिन वन थिंग इज कंफर्म कि यस यू आर गोइंग टू हैव अ सब स्टेज, ठीक है? सो आप प्लीज दोज हु आर ऑनलाइन जो लॉग्ड इन हैं, प्लीज टेल द rest of the class as well. Okay, so I think that is how far let's start with the class. Okay. Okay, हमने यूट्रस की एब्नॉर्मैलिटीज कर ली थी और अब हम लेट्स फिनिश ऑफ विद द genital anomalies of the female genital tract. Vagina की anomalies में ये है कि there could be an absence of the uterus and the vagina. This occurs in 1 in 1,000 female babies में the vagina is absent. What is the reason? बेटा आपको बताया था vagina is formed by the sinovaginal bulbs that develop from the urogenital sinus. ठीक है? If the sinovaginal bulbs they fail to grow, they fail to develop, so then there is no vaginal plate. और जब vaginal plate नहीं होगी, the vagina does not develop. At times, uterus may be absent, and the uterus absence, it is the uterovaginal primordium, the developing uterus that stimulates or induces the urogenital sinus to form the sinovaginal bulb. I repeat once again, the developing uterus induces the urogenital sinus to develop the sinovaginal bulbs. If the uterus does not develop, the sinovaginal bulbs do not develop. As a result, the vagina does not form. बाकी urogenital sinus anomalies हैं, they are associated with other anomalies like skeletal system की anomalies may also be present, and this is a long syndrome as Rokitansky's Putzer-Hauser syndrome, whatever. Vaginal atresia में the vagina has developed, but the vaginal plate है, this is the vaginal plate, this fails to canalize. This occurs in 1 in 80,000 female babies, The lumen of the vagina is absent in the lower two units. Okay? And the vagina is represented as just as a transverse septum. The cervix is surrounded by cervix TK. This is normal, and it is surrounded by this thing, this structure, which is a pouch, a dilated structure. इसको vaginal pouch कहते हैं इसको, ठीक है? So जो upper 1/3 of the vagina है, that develops into this vaginal pouch, because if you remember, this part of the vagina develops from paramesonephric duct. Lower part of the vagina develops from the sinovaginal bowels. Cervix, in this case, if there is partial or complete atresia of both the paramesonephric ducts, this results in the atresia of the cervix. ठीक है, ये cervix का देखें atresia होगा. Double vagina, failure of sinovaginal bulbs normally develop होते हैं, but they fail to fuse. So you have two separate sinovaginal bulbs developing as a result. Each sinovaginal bulb develops into a separate vagina as a result. There are two vaginas. अब इसमें you would have two types of anomalies. Either there is a completely separate vagina, one on either side, right and left side, completely separate vagina. In the other case, there is one vagina which is divided into two by a membranous septum. Okay, a single vagina divided into two by a membranous septum. Excuse me. Now, normally the hymen perforates after birth. The perinatal period में हो जाता है. But at times what happens is the vagina fails to fuse. Of this condition, failure of perforation of vagina, imperforate hymen जिसको कहते हैं. This hymen is not perforated. This condition goes undetected during childhood. It only becomes obvious when the girl is old enough to menstruate. There is no menstruation. So the problem is कि menstruation तो नहीं है, but the blood cannot come out. So the blood accumulates in the uterine cavity. This condition is called hematocross. आसान हल है, just make an incision in this hymen and the problem gets solved. All these are different types of different shapes and different types of hymen. Normal, this is cribriform type, septate type, a very small one, etc. Okay, now let's do the development of indifferent external genitalia. Like you see in the development of the gonad, that was testes and the ovary, and as you did in the development of the genital ducts, in both of them, in the gonads, ovary and testes, or genital ducts, all these structures to begin with had an indifferent stage. Gonads की development में indifferent stage था, जिसमें you had the medulla and testes, both of them. Sorry?
Screen में share नहीं हो रही, दोबारा करें.
Okay. तो अभी तक मैं क्या पढ़ा रही थी?
नहीं मैम अभी गई, जैसे नहीं मैं आपके पास आ गया.
अच्छा.
वहाँ पे है जो है वो जो खोला हुआ वहाँ पे
जो खोला हुआ है इस पे ही जाओ इधर
बैठे हैं।
नहीं आई
लीव करके दोबारा कर
यहाँ से दोबारा जाओ इसको बंद करना
इसको काट दोबारा कर मैं स्क्रीन शेयर करें
रिटर्न टू मीटिंग
आई क्या नहीं मैं आपको सुना दूँ कभी कभी ये प्रॉब्लम होती है शेप शेप यार दूसरी का स्क्रीन का प्रॉब्लम आ रही है मैं चेक करता हूँ मोबाइल लगने के बावजूद वो सही हो रहा है जी मैम करें बस करें आप
नहीं नहीं
मैम कौन सी वाली ये वाली
ये वाले दोनों से कोई स्पीकर वो नहीं आई मुझे
Wait. Such. Oh.
हो गया? अच्छा जी, so I am so sorry for the खैरियत है, मैं क्लास ले रही हूँ। हाँ जी, मैंने 11 बजे कॉल। अच्छा जी, so I am so sorry about this delay. बीच में there was a problem with the internet. ठीक है? So let's start all over again. We were talking about the development of external genitalia. Indifferent stage पे शुरू होते हैं. There was an indifferent stage in the development of testes and ovaries. There was an indifferent stage in the development of ducts, genital ducts. ठीक है? Same is the case over here. External genitalia की भी development. To begin with, this is an indifferent stage. It starts at the 3rd week and lasts up to the 7th week. So between the 3rd to the end of 3rd week to the 7th week, the external genitalia in both the genders is the same. 9th week May, distinguishing features begin to develop, and by the 12th week, the external genitalia are fully developed and they are fully differentiated. Not only developed, they are fully differentiated, meaning that if you do an ultrasound, a good ultrasoundologist will be able to pick up whether the gender of the baby is male or female. अच्छा जी, so indifferent stage. If you remember this thing, this was this slipper shaped plate. ठीक है? This was the ये तो है neural tube है. This is the neural plate. This was the oropharyngeal membrane, neural tube थी. This was the primitive streak. ये primitive node है, and this was the primitive streak, and this at the caudal end was the cloacal membrane. Now, what happens is the 3rd week में the mesenchyme in the primitive streak. ये primitive streak है. The mesenchyme in the primitive streak migrates and goes around the cloacal membrane. I repeat once again, the mesenchyme in the primitive streak encircles or goes around the cloacal membrane. As this happens, this mesenchyme gets condensed or gets heaped up on either side of the cloacal membrane and forms 2 swellings, one on either side. ये देख लीजिए, एक ये swelling है, एक ये swelling है. These swellings are, this is the cloacal membrane. यही वाली cloacal membrane, this is the cloacal membrane. So the mesenchyme gets heaped up and appears as a swelling, one on either side, right and left. This is called cloacal fold. This heaping up of mesenchyme on either side of the cloacal membrane is called cloacal fold. Cranial to this cloacal membrane, the mesenchyme unites in the midline, your right and left side की जो mesenchyme थी. This comes together, it fuses in the midline and develops a swelling or a tubercle which is called genital tubercle. So this is the cloacal membrane. The mesenchyme gets heaped up on either side to form cloacal folds, and cranially it fuses in the midline, gets heaped up, forms a swelling which is called genital tubercle. Actually, now going back to the development of the hindgush. If you remember, this is the urogenital sinus, okay, and this was the urorectal septum, mass of mesenchyme that bumped into the urogenital sinus and started growing towards the. This is the anal pit or proctodeum, and this is the cloacal membrane. So this mass of mesenchyme started growing towards the cloacal membrane. Okay? It reaches as far as this urorectal septum, reaches and touches the cloacal membrane and divides the urogenital sinus into two. The dorsal part was developed into the anal canal and rectum, and the ventral part was the urogenital sinus. Okay. Now, with the development of with the division of the urogenital sinus, ये जो cloacal membrane थी, this also gets divided into two. A dorsal one called the anal membrane and a ventral one called the urogenital membrane. मैं फिर repeat कर देती हूँ. Urorectal septum, a mass of mesenchyme, divides the urogenital sinus into a dorsal and ventral parts. At the same time, since the urorectal septum touches the cloacal membrane, it divides the cloacal membrane into two. The dorsal one is called the anal membrane and the ventral one is called urogenital membrane. This is the urogenital membrane. ठीक है? As a result, अब ये जो fold था, cloacal fold on either side of the cloacal membrane, this fold also gets divided into right and left parts. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Right and left, dorsal and ventral. The dorsal is the anal fold. Sorry, I'm so sorry. The dorsal one is the anal fold, and the ventral one is the urogenital fold. Sorry, urethral fold या urogenital fold आप जो भी इसको कहना चाहें. I repeat once again कि ये जो cloacal folds थे either side of the cloacal membrane अभी हमने किए थे, this also gets divided into two. This part of the fold that surrounds the anal membrane, that part, ये जो surround करेगा anal membrane को, that will be called anal fold, and the part of the fold that surrounds the urogenital membrane, जो इसको surround करेगा, that will be called urethral fold या urogenital fold, आप जो भी इसको कहना चाहें. Both the names are mentioned in your books. अच्छा जी. Now, so ये genital tubercle, ये urethral fold, and this is the anal fold. ये Langman की drawing है. ठीक है. Now, at the same time, a new pair of swelling appears on either side of the urethral fold. ये भी mesenchyme से develop हुई है. ये this new swelling. This new swelling is called genital fold या labioscrotal swelling. दोनों नाम इसके हैं. You can call it a genital fold or a labioscrotal swelling. Now, what happens is कि ये तो mesenchyme की heaping up से urethral folds और anal fold बने थे. Because of heaping up of the urethral folds, this urogenital membrane, this goes into a depth, and then seventh week में ये urogenital membrane जो है, this ruptures. When the urogenital membrane ruptures, the urogenital sinus, the phallic part of the urogenital sinus, comes into open communication with the amniotic cavity. Okay? Because it was this fold, the cloacal fold जो कि divide हुआ था urogenital membrane में and anal membrane में. This was actually forming a partition between the urogenital sinus and the amniotic cavity. When this fold ruptures, the urogenital phallic part of the urogenital membrane comes in contact with the amniotic cavity. If you remember correctly, हमने urogenital साइनस के तीन पार्ट्स बताए थे मैंने आपको. The urogenital sinus was divided into three parts: a vesical part from which the urinary bladder developed most of it, then came a pelvic part, and then the caudal most part was the phallic part. Phallic part से ये अब develop होगा. Okay. Now, with the opening of the urogenital sinus, अब ये membrane तो चली गई. So this is an opening which is surrounded by these folds, urethral folds. ठीक है? They come close together. They come close together and form a depth or groove. ये देख लीजिए ये groove बन गया. इसको urethral groove कहते हैं, which is on either side, which is bounded by this urethral fold. ठीक है? And this genital tubercle then elongates and develops into a phallus. ठीक है? Now, अभी तक all this is the indifferent stage. Females में भी इसी तरह की development है कि to begin with the phallus, the genital tubercle elongates and develops into the phallus. Okay. ठीक है? Now comes the 8th week. 7th week तक indifferent stage थी. 7th week onwards, 8th week onwards, अब differentiation शुरू हो गई है. So let's first do the male external genitalia. अभी तक do we have any questions? Beta, any questions as far as the indifferent stage is concerned? नहीं है. Good, that's very good. That means either you're not listening or you understood everything. Whatever. Anyway. So, male external genitalia, beta, what happens is, I told you that testosterone is secreted by the developing gonad. Testes में, the interstitial cells of Leydig that develop, they secrete testosterone. Testosterone acts on the target tissues. You have receptors for testosterone. उस पे जाके testosterone है, dihydrotestosterone, that acts, and it is with the presence of high levels of testosterone that differentiation starts and is completed. ठीक है? क्या होता है differentiation में? कि this phallus, this elongates. ठीक है? अब ये urethral folds थे और ये urethral membrane पहले यहाँ पे थी, rupture कर गई, अब urethral groove बन गया ये. ठीक है? Now what happens is कि mesenchyme in the urethral fold, this begins to proliferate. जब ये proliferate करती है, please note the urethral groove जो है that becomes deeper. और गहरा हो जाता है. Then comes a time, और ये जो groove है, please note this is lying on the ventral surface of the shaft of penis. ठीक है? ये जो under surface या inferior surface of the shaft of penis होती है, इसको ventral surface कहते हैं. So this groove is lying on the ventral surface or the inferior surface. Okay. Now, as the phallus is enlarges, a circular sulcus or a groove appears at the most caudal end, distal end of the penis. As this groove appears, it divides it into glands. Distal to the caudal sulcus is the glans, and proximal to it is the body or the shaft. ये भी आपकी लैंगमैन की ड्राइंग है. अच्छा जी, एक बात याद रखिए कि ये जो urethral groove है ना, this does not extend as far as the glands. ये जो newly developed glands है, this urethral groove will not extend into the glands. ठीक है? It remains in the shaft. Now, the endodermal lining of the urogenital sinus, वो अब urethral groove की endodermal lining बन गई. So ये जो lining of the urethral groove है, this thickens and develops into a urethral plate. ये जो yellow सी आपको line नजर आ रही है, this is the urethral plate. And this urethral plate extends from the phallic part of the urogenital sinus. Up, what happens is these urethral folds, one on either side, they fuse in the midline. Okay. Both these folds come together and they fuse in the midline. This line of fusion is visible on the ventral surface of the shaft of the penis. When these two folds they fuse with each other, this urethral groove is converted into a circular opening. This is then developing into the urethra. We call this part of the urethra as spongy or penile urethra. Okay, this is the spongy or the penile urethra, formed by the fusion of the two urethral folds. They fuse in the midline. Achha ji, so this is the spongy urethra that is formed in the body of the or shaft of the penis, formed by the fusion of the right and left urethral folds. Now, what happens is that before I go any further, beta, this fusion of the two right and left folds, this is visible on the undersurface of the penis as a longitudinal raphe. This raphe is called penile raphe. ठीक है? ये तो खैर urethra है, spongy urethra है. अभी मैं आपको दिखा देती हूँ में. What happens is that apex या tip of the gland से solid cord of cells, ये cord of cells जो है, they begin to grow inwards from the apex, from the tip of the glands. A solid cord of cells begins to grow inward and grow as far as the spongy urethra. ठीक है? When they grow as far as the spongy urethra, the solid cord and the spongy urethra come urethra come in contact with each other. Then solid cord cells, this breaks down and a lumen is formed, and this पहले सिर्फ they were coming in contact with each other, then they fused with each other and become continuous with each other. At the same time, this solid cord of cells में एक lumen appear कर जाता है. ठीक है? So now the continuity of the urethra goes as far as the tip of the glands. अभी तक I told you that the urethra, spongy urethra, did not extend into the glands. Okay? But now this solid cord of cells and spongy urethra, they fuse with each other, and the lumen appears in the solid cord of cells, and finally the lumen, it becomes one long continuous lumen. So up to now, the opening of the urethra was up to here, up to the glands, but now the opening of the urethra is shifted up to the tip. ये देखिए, external urethral opening extends up to the tip. ये देखिए, called canalized हो गया and spongy urethra develops, moves to the external urethral meatus. Now, what happens is, after that, circular ingrowth of cells of ectoderm at the periphery of the glands. There's an ingrowth of cells. Circular is like it goes all around glands. Ingrowth of cells. Okay? This ingrowth of cells, after birth, ये जो cells की ingrowth, these cells break down. When they break down, the glands is separate and the skin is separated out. This separate skin, which is separate from the gland, even though it is surrounding the gland, it is separated from the gland. This is called prepuce. It is, or the foreskin, whatever you want to call it. It is this prepuce or foreskin which is removed in the small operation called circumcision. ठीक है? Circumcision में ये जो extra skin है, that is removed. अच्छा जी, अब urethra की तो हमने development कर ली. This over here is the line of fusion of the urethral folds. ये median raphe है, midline raphe है, penile raphe जिसको कहते हैं. Yeah. ठीक है? Now, the surrounding mesenchyme surrounding the urethra, spongy urethra. This mesenchyme proliferates and develops into corpus spongiosum. I repeat once again. Spongy urethra or penile urethra, the mesenchyme surrounding the penile urethra, this proliferates and develops into corpus spongiosum. Similarly, proliferation of mesenchyme sac, you also have the development of corpus cavernosum. So the corpus cavernosum and corpus spongiosum, they develop from proliferation of mesenchyme. Then, if you remember, we talked about another swelling that was lying on either side of the urethral fold. इनको हमने, we call them labioscrotal swelling, or on either side of the urethral folds. This is the labioscrotal swelling. These labioscrotal swellings, they elongate, okay, and they move closer towards each other, and finally, caudally, they fuse with each other. When they fuse with each other, when the two labioscrotal swellings they fuse with each other, they develop into the scrotum. And externally, the line of fusion can be seen as a scrotal raphe. On the external surface, it is visible as the scrotal raphe. On the internal surface, it is seen as scrotal septum. So internally, a septum divides the scrotum into right and left half, and in each half, we have the right and left testes. Now, let's come to the female external genitalia. Beta female external genitalia, ninth week onwards. ये actually तो उसकी exact differentiation we still don't know, but it is said that the estrogen that is secreted by the placenta and the estrogen that is secreted by the ovaries, they play a role in the development of female external genitalia. A primordially phallus develops. This is genital tubercle, urethral folds, and these are the labioscrotal folds. ठीक है? So ये जो primordial phallus है, this develops into the clitoris. So to begin with, by the up to the 18th week, the clitoris is comparatively large. ठीक है? The urethral folds, males may they were got fused and developed into urethra. Females may they remain separate. The urethral folds in the female they remain separate and develop into labia minus. The unfused urethral folds develop into labia minus, and however posteriorly there is some degree of fusion. ये जो urethral folds हैं posterior end पे they fuse, they come close to the mid, together in the midline, they fuse with each other. This fused part is called the frenulum of labia minor. Then on either side of the urethral fold, ये urethral folds हैं, ये frenulum, यहाँ पे इनकी fusion से frenulum of labia minor. On either side of the urethral fold, you had the labioscrotal swellings. Okay? ये जो labioscrotal swellings हैं, they remain separate. However, posteriorly, they come close to each other and they fuse in the midline and develop into what is called posterior labial commissure. Anteriorly, the labioscrotal swellings, they come close to each other and develop into anterior labial commissure. On either side, the labial scrotal swellings, they enlarge and form the labia major or labia majora. Okay? And anteriorly, this same form, the labioscrotal swelling also develop into the mons pubis. अच्छा जी. So अब male external genitalia की anomalies क्या है? अभी तक I don't think you have any problems. Otherwise we question आ गया. Beta, the most common type of anomaly related to the venus is hypospadias. Hypospadias is a condition in which the urethra opens not at the tip of the glans but anywhere else. What are the sites where the urethra may open is in a glandular hypospadia site, This is the commonest type. Penile, penoscrotal, and perennial. Okay? All four, we'll just discuss them one by one. Uh, why do this condition develop? It is either the inadequate production of androgens, या फिर ये है कि the androgens are normally produced, but the receptor sites on which the androgens act, वो receptor sites, they are either inadequate या फिर वो develop ही नहीं हुए, develop हुए but far less in number. ठीक है? अब उसका रिजल्ट क्या होगा कि there is either failure of canalization of ectodermal cord in the glands. आपको बताया था glands में solid ectodermal plate या rod of cells जो है that grows inwards. If this rod of cells fails to canalize, उसमें lumen नहीं बनता, then only the spongy urethra part of the urethra develops. या फिर दूसरी सूरत ये है कि जो यूरिथ्रल फोल्ड्स हमने कहा था मिडलाइन में फ्यूज कर जाती हैं एंड डेवलप इनटू यूरेथ्रा. इफ दीज यूरिथ्रल फोल्ड्स डू नॉट फ्यूज, इफ दे फेल टू फ्यूज, तो फिर ये कंडीशन हाइपोस्पेडियास डेवलप हो जाएगा. इसमें देख लीजिए दिस बेबी इंस्टेड ऑफ दिस इज द यूरेथ्रा. Instead of opening over here at the tip of the urethra, it is opening on the undersurface or the ventral surface of the glands. This is the glandular type of hypospadias. This occurs in 1 in 300 male infants. Commonest type यही है. Penile type. इसमें जो external urethral orifice है, that is present on the body of the shaft of the penis. यहाँ पे ये देख लीजिए ये. Okay? You can see the penis is undeveloped and it is not visible over here clearly, but it is curved ventrally. This ventral curvature of this structure is called chordae. Yeah. Penoscrotal type. Present, the urethral opening is present over here at the junction of scrotum and penis. Okay? यहाँ पे ये देख लीजिए. By the way, this is where the scrotal raphe and this is where the penile raphe is present in the midline. Perennial hypospadias, very unfortunate condition. अब इसमें the labia, the labioscrotal swellings, they fail to fuse. ठीक है? As a result, the external urethral orifice is present between the two halves of the scrotum. Right and left scrotum, between them, this is the urethral orifice. Obviously, the external genitalia, you can see that ambiguous, neither male nor female. And this is also accompanied by cryptorchidism. Cryptorchidism, I told you, was simply undescended testes. So this condition is misdiagnosed as male pseudo-hermaphroditism. Hermaphrodites are what you call in our language as वजैसा या दूसरा sad way to call them, but yes, they are hermaphrodites. ठीक है. अच्छा, दूसरी condition जो है ना, this earlier condition I told you, hypospadias, the urethra was opening on the undersurface of the penis. Now you have a condition in which the urethra is opening on the superior surface or the upper surface, also called the dorsal surface of the penis. Okay? This is something very rare. It is 1 in 30,000 male infants. The urethra opening on the dorsal surface. Okay? And unfortunately, it may be accompanied by the extra strophy of bladder, जिसमें bladder की anterior wall is not developed, and you can see the mucosa of the bladder from inside. ठीक है? अब why does this condition develop? इसमें होता ये है कि जो genital tubercle है ना, that shifts, उसका जो primordium of genital tubercle है ना, that shifts uh, more dorsally, shifts over here. As a result, the urethral groove is formed on the dorsal surface. ठीक है? Perennial hypospheres, ये इसमें ये जो टोटल स्पेलिंग भी बताया था, सॉरी, अच्छा जी, a genesis of external genitalia, इसमें देख लीजिए there are no external genitalia, there is congenital absence of external genitalia. This is something very very rare. Cause क्या है? Cause is the genital tubercle fails to develop. As a result, genitalia do not develop, and the urethra may open. This is somewhere where the urethra is, may open somewhere close to the anus, in the perineum, wherever. Very unfortunate. This is something very rare. It is double penis or bifid penis. It is caused by the splitting of genital tubercles. अगर complete splitting होगी तो double होगा, और अगर two genital tubercles बने तो फिर bifid penis होगा. Bifid penis जो है, that is associated with extra strophy of bladder and other genital abnormalities of the urinary tract, or even imperforations. Micropenis is a very small sized penis, almost hidden under the suprapubic fat. Reason, there is a deficiency of androgens. In the process of development, the androgens do not, enough androgens are not produced. ठीक है? ये अब होता क्या है उसकी वजह से? Why? क्यों नहीं androgens produce हो रहे? कि either there is primary hypogonadism, that means the testicular failure है, the testicular testes do not develop in time, or don't develop enough, do not produce enough testosterone, या फिर दूसरी सूरत में primary hypopituitarism, pituitary gland की development में problem है, because it is the, you all know कि जो stimulus है that comes from the pituitary and it acts on the gonads. अगर pituitary develop नहीं होगा, it will not stimulate the gonads to stimulate, and if gonads are not stimulated, that is testes is not stimulated, then it will not produce testosterone. Okay, ये जो है we will do next time because ये थोड़ा सा tricky है. Any questions? अच्छा जी, since now we have quite a number of participants, 139, ठीक है? So I repeat once again, please gross anatomy की substage होगी, ठीक है? Day after tomorrow when I take your lecture, so inshallah, I will let you know the date. But for now, yes, you are going to have a gross anatomy substage. उसमें head and neck होगा. So syllabus क्या होगा वो हम अभी बाद में डिस्कस कर लेते हैं. तो I will tell you. But obviously उसमें skull होगी, उसमें scalp face, उसकी सारी blood supply, nerve supply, muscles, etc. Then you're going to have parotid gland, temporal and infratemporal fossa. That is something that we are going to discuss next week, inshallah. Okay. Now, do we have any questions regarding anything related to anything? चाहे वो embryology हो, if you haven't understood anything, or anything related to head and neck. gross anatomy of it. No? Good. वालेकुम अस्सलाम बेटा. अच्छा डॉक्टर हारून जो है वो शुरू हो गए. बेटा नॉर्मल एक्सटर्नल यूरेथ्रल orifice की जो ओपनिंग है वो at the tip of the glands है. Let me show you that slide. देखो नॉर्मल यूरेथ्रल orifice की जो ओपनिंग है ना it should be over here where you have my cursor, tip of the glands, but these are abnormal openings. Undersurface, it could be either on the undersurface of the gland, could be at shaft of the glands, junction of the shaft of the shaft of the body of the penis, junction of the scrotum and the penis, or perennial penis scrotal type. Yeah. Any other question? You're welcome, my dear. Any other question? Any other questions? I don't suppose we have any questions. सॉरी बेटा क्या बता दूं दोबारा क्या बता दूं Komal, what do you want me to repeat बेटा जी वालेकुम सलाम बेटा how are you here बेटा जरा इधर आ जाओ लाइब्रेरी में I want to talk to you नॉर्मल ओपनिंग दोबारा बता दूं मैं बता देती हूँ बेटा देखो this is the normal opening ये tip of the glands पे ये this is where the normal opening is ठीक है ये this part is the gland which is formed by the constriction that developed in this developing phallus ठीक है so it divided this entire structure into a distal part which is the glands and this is the more proximal part the shaft इस ग्लैंड्स के टिप पे यहाँ पे दिस इज द यूरेथ्रल आउटलेट या यूरेथ्रल ऑरिफिस या यूरेथ्रल ओपनिंग आप जो भी इसको कहना चाहें एनीथिंग एल्स एनी अदर क्वेश्चन बेटे क्योंकि आई थिंक हमारा टाइम अब खत्म हो गया है या होता जा रहा है व्हाटएवर 1 minute more any other question no okay in that case wish you all the best and I will see you inshallah day after tomorrow Saturday morning inshallah Goodbye and Khuda Hafiz.